There's this image we all tend to have of the perfectly managed classroom, or like the perfectly managed boardroom for that matter.
Right, where everyone is just sitting quietly.
Exactly. Everyone's sitting quietly, nodding along, following instructions to the letter. And, it looks like the absolute picture of success.
Yeah, it looks like a safe, productive environment,
Yeah.
mainly because there's no visible conflict. I mean, everything appears completely under control.
Right.
But when you start looking just a little bit under the surface into the actual psychology of authority and obedience,
Mhm.
you realize that a quiet room might not be a safe room at all. Sometimes it is literally just a terrified room.
Wow. Yeah, it's like the illusion of compliance masking a complete lack of trust. And that distinction, it really changes everything about how we view leadership.
It completely reframes it.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled you could join us. Today, we're looking at a single, incredibly fascinating document. It was originally written for DSLs. That stands for Designated Safeguarding Leads.
Right, so those are the folks in charge of pastoral care, student safety, and just overall well-being in schools and boarding environments.
Exactly. And their source material for understanding complex human behavior in this document. A dog trainer.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, sounds completely jarring at first.
It really does.
We are talking about highly complex human development, and the text is asking us to look at animal handling. But the premise forces us to completely reevaluate how we handle conflict. The core argument here is that we have to stop looking at difficult behavior as, just something to be managed or crushed.
Yeah.
And we have to start looking at it as a language that desperately needs to be translated.
Right, because behavior is essentially a form of communication. And the mission today is to extract the core insights from this document and explore this honestly counterintuitive idea that true trust and safety are built through clarity and consistency rather than just strict control.
And it makes total sense why you, our listener, would be drawn to this. If you have any interest in human psychology or leadership or just figuring out why people do the things they do, this perspective shift is huge.
Totally. So, think about how authorities typically react to difficult behavior, like a kid is acting out in a classroom, or maybe an employee is being subtly disruptive or, I don't know, hostile in a meeting. The immediate instinct, almost universally, is just, how do I stop this?
Right. How do I enforce compliance right now?
Exactly. We just want the disruption to end because it feels like a threat to the structure of the room.
Yeah, the instinct is always to restore order as quickly as possible because disruptions are incredibly uncomfortable for the person in charge.
Oh, absolutely.
But the document points out that this is where a skilled dog trainer takes a completely different approach. They don't start by asking, how do I control this behavior?
I don't.
No, they begin by observing the environment. They look at the stress levels, the reinforcement history, and they ask, what is this behavior communicating? Because behavior is rarely just random.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to me, treating difficult behavior just by demanding immediate compliance, it's exactly like putting a piece of black tape over your car's check engine light.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. I mean, sure, it stops the annoying blinking right in your face. The visual disruption is gone, and you can pretend everything is fine, but the engine is still failing. You haven't actually fixed anything, you've just ignored the diagnostic warning.
Yeah, that analogy captures the exact mechanism of safeguarding informed pastoral care. We are actually required to look under the hood. The text asks a much deeper, much more difficult question of leaders.
Which is?
What need, what emotion, what fear, or what unmet experience is this behavior communicating? Because the reality of human psychology is that behavior tells the story long before a verbal disclosure ever does.
So if behavior is essentially communication, then we have to talk about how to decode what it is actually saying. Because it's rarely straightforward, is it?
Not at all. People, and especially young people, they do not communicate their distress in perfectly articulate ways.
Right. You aren't going to have a struggling teenager calmly walk up to a teacher and say, "Excuse me, I am currently experiencing severe emotional dysregulation due to an unmet need for safety at home."
Exactly. They don't have the vocabulary, the self-awareness, or honestly, the psychological safety to do that.
Yeah.
Instead, the behavior itself becomes the megaphone for the distress.
This brings us to the first core insight from the text, which is that behavior is communication before it is defiance.
Yes, and the source document gives some incredibly vivid examples of how behavior masks deeper issues, starting with withdrawal.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, a student who just puts their head down, refuses to participate, or constantly asks to go to the bathroom. Now, that might look lazy or unmotivated to an observer,
Yeah.
but biologically, that withdrawal is often masking deep anxiety.
So the nervous system is just entirely overwhelmed, and it shuts down to protect itself. It's a survival mechanism, not like a deliberate insult to the teacher's lesson plan.
Exactly. Or consider aggression. We see a kid lash out verbally or physically, and we immediately think, okay, threat or anger. We want to neutralize the threat.
Naturally,
But
yeah.
aggression is very frequently masking profound insecurity. It basically operates as a defense mechanism, like a preemptive strike, to protect a very fragile sense of self from perceived humiliation or failure.
Wow. And the text also mentions humor, which is so universally recognizable.
Oh, the class clown.
Right, the class clown who won't take anything seriously, just making jokes out of every instruction. It looks like they're just seeking attention or trying to derail the class.
Yeah, but that constant humor is often masking severe emotional discomfort. Deflecting with a joke is simply easier than sitting with a painful feeling or, admitting you don't understand the material.
Wait, so if a kid is being outright defiant, just aggressively refusing to follow rules, challenging the teacher's authority directly in front of 20 other kids, is a teacher really supposed to just sit back and see that as a lack of safety? Isn't it sometimes just plain old bad behavior that needs to be punished so the rest of the class can learn?
What's fascinating here is how the dog trainer principle completely reorients that exact frustration. It doesn't mean you excuse the behavior or let chaos reign. You still absolutely need boundaries.
Okay, good.
But training and teaching starts by understanding the underlying mechanics of the behavior. You have to figure out why it exists, what reinforces it, and what emotional state drives it. Defiance is information before it is misconduct.
So the defiance is essentially a diagnostic tool.
Yes, exactly. If a student is being openly defiant, it's almost always a signal that they do not trust the adult, or they just do not feel safe in the environment.
Their brain has categorized the situation as a threat.
Right. They are in a fight or flight state, testing the boundaries to see what happens. And if a leader just brings down the hammer and punishes the defiance without addressing that underlying lack of safety, they're just adding more tension to a system that is already breaking down.
Which brings us to the environment itself. Because analyzing the student's internal state is only half the equation, right?
Yeah.
The other half is looking directly at the adult in the room and the environment they are creating.
That's a huge piece of this.
The source links two massive variables here, which are core insights 2 and 4. The consistency of the adult's responses and the actual emotional energy they bring into the space.
Yeah, so the brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It constantly wants to know what is going to happen next so it can keep us safe. The dog trainer principle notes that if boundaries change constantly, the brain can't predict the environment.
And learning becomes impossible because anxiety spikes.
Exactly.
It makes complete sense. I mean, imagine playing a competitive game where the referee keeps changing the rules every 5 minutes without telling you.
That would be a nightmare.
Right, sometimes touching the ball is fine, sometimes it gets you ejected. You would be stressed out of your mind. You'd be in a constant state of hypervigilance.
And that is the exact neurological state students are in when rules shift unpredictably. If a behavior is ignored on Monday because the teacher is tired, but then aggressively punished on Tuesday because the teacher is stressed, that doesn't teach clarity. It teaches confusion.
So the boundaries are shifting based on the adult's feelings, not the actual rules.
Yes. Students feel significantly less safe when different adults respond differently to the same situation. Or worse, when consequences depend entirely on an adult's mood that day.
So the environment becomes entirely volatile. The student has to constantly assess the emotional weather of the adult before they even think about learning.
And the document states a very stark professional truth regarding this. Inconsistent safeguarding cultures almost always produce increased behavioral instability.
So chaotic adults create chaotic kids.
Exactly. Consistency creates emotional predictability, and predictability is the foundation of psychological safety.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We have all seen the opposite of calm, predictable leadership play out in real time.
Oh, definitely.
A student is totally emotionally dysregulated, acting out, yelling. And how does the adult respond? By getting emotionally dysregulated themselves. They raise their voice, their posture gets aggressive, they start issuing ultimatums.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? An adult throwing a tantrum over a student's lack of emotional regulation.
They are literally pouring gasoline on the fire while screaming at it to go out.
It is a profound failure of leadership in that moment, often driven by the adult's own ego feeling threatened. Animals respond immediately to tone, to tension, to the emotional energies of the handler. If a trainer is anxious and frantic, pulling erratically on the leash, the dog becomes anxious and frantic.
Because they pick up on that energy.
Right. And students are no different. They rely on the adult's nervous system to help regulate their own. If the adult is dysregulated, it escalates the student's dysregulation every single time. Calm responses under pressure are just non-negotiable.
But if calm regulation is so effective, it begs the question of why so many institutions still rely on fear and intimidation to maintain order.
That's the illusion of compliance, which is the third core insight.
Right. We have all been in environments, classrooms, offices, homes where the authority figure rules with an iron fist, and it seems to work on the surface. The room is quiet, the work gets done.
But we really have to differentiate between looking safe and actually being safe. Control through intimidation might produce immediate obedience. I mean, if you yell loud enough, people will usually sit down and be quiet.
Because the threat centers in their brain light up.
Exactly. And they comply to survive the moment. They are afraid of punishment or embarrassment or just the adult's reaction. But the cost of that compliance is monumental.
It completely shatters any foundation of trust. They might comply, but they definitely don't feel safe.
This raises an important question, a system-level audit from the text that every leader needs to ask themselves. Are the people in your setting behaving because they feel emotionally safe and understood, or simply because they fear the consequences?
Because if they are just afraid of the consequences, the communication pathway is permanently blocked. A student who complies out of fear of being screamed at is not a student who is going to disclose that they are being bullied online.
No, they won't.
They are not going to admit they are experiencing abuse at home. The fear that keeps them quiet in their chair is the exact same fear that keeps them quiet about their trauma.
Which is why the text advocates for a massive leadership shift from authoritarian control to relational authority. Authoritarian control says, do this because I have the power to punish you, and I will.
Right. And what does relational authority say?
Relational authority says, do this because we have a shared trust, you know my boundaries are consistent, and I am guiding you toward a safe outcome.
So, if fear doesn't build trust, what are the practical mechanics of actually building it? You don't just stand up at the front of the room, declare we operate on relational authority now, and magically everyone trusts you. How is that credibility actually earned?
It happens in the microscopic moments. This is core insight 5. Trust doesn't just appear out of nowhere during a crisis. It develops through repetition and reliability.
Like thousands of small interactions.
Exactly. The human amygdala is constantly scanning the environment, asking, is this person safe? Over and over again.
It is the everyday reps. It's the tone of voice you use when you say good morning. It's making eye contact and listening respectfully when a student is explaining a seemingly minor grievance instead of just dismissing them.
Yeah, it's following through consistently on a small promise you made yesterday. Safeguarding credibility is built gradually, long before the crisis moments ever occur.
So if you haven't put in the reps during the calm, everyday interactions,
you will have zero relational capital to draw on when a major behavioral incident happens. The student continuously assesses your emotional consistency. If you are proven to be a safe, predictable presence in the small things, they will trust your guidance in the big things.
it seems to me that a dog trainer's goal isn't to just hold the leash incredibly tight forever. I mean, if they do that, the dog never learns how to exist in the world without being physically restrained.
Right. The goal is eventually to be able to let go of the leash entirely.
That has to be the end game for a designated safeguarding lead too, right?
Right.
This is the sixth core insight about internal safety versus external dependence.
Yes. A skilled trainer wants to develop confidence, stability, and healthy behavioral regulation in the animal so it can navigate the world safely on its own. The translation for pastoral leadership is perfectly aligned.
So what does this all mean? The ultimate goal of all this discipline, boundary setting, and relationship building is not to create a population of students who are endlessly dependent on an authority figure to tell them what to do.
No, we aren't trying to build compliant robots. We are trying to build independent, functioning humans.
Right.
The goal is growth toward healthy autonomy. It's about developing a young person's self-awareness, their own internal emotional regulation, and their capacity for healthy decision-making. You are trying to build internal safety and resilience so that when they leave your environment, they carry that safety with them.
They don't need the external threat of punishment to make good choices.
Exactly, because they have developed an internal compass based on trust and regulation.
As brilliant as the dog trainer parallel is for exposing our instincts around control and discipline, we do need to set some intellectual boundaries on this metaphor. This is what the source calls the honest bit.
Yes, it's crucial.
We have to address the limits of comparing pastoral care to animal handling so we don't end up oversimplifying the very real complexities of human development. What should DSLs absolutely not take away from this?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to state clearly, students are not animals to be managed. Human behavior is infinitely more emotionally and socially complex than a dog learning to sit or heel.
Right.
A dog trainer is fundamentally focused on behavioral conditioning. They're using reinforcement systems, treats, praise, spatial pressure to shape specific physical actions.
They are essentially programming responses, but a DSL, or really any leader managing human beings, is dealing with deep emotional and relational systems, not just behavioral conditioning.
They are dealing with trauma. They are dealing with evolving human identity, with complex social dynamics, with systemic inequalities that impact well-being. Safeguarding is fundamentally relational and developmental.
It requires interpreting behavior through a holistic well-being lens.
Exactly. The foundational principles overlap perfectly. The need for clarity, for consistency, for calm leadership, and for looking at behavior as communication. But humans require a depth of emotional intelligence, empathy, and identity support that goes far beyond conditioning. We're building humans, not just training compliance.
This entire perspective completely changes how you view a disruption. And as we wrap up, I want to connect this back to you, the listener. Because it doesn't matter if you're a manager trying to guide a team through a stressful quarter, a parent navigating a toddler's meltdown in a grocery store, a colleague dealing with a difficult coworker, or a DSL in a busy school.
The setting doesn't matter, the psychology is the same.
Right. The core principle remains universally true. Behavior is communication. When things get difficult, when the room gets loud and the rules are tested, sustainable trust is never, ever built through fear or force or unpredictability. It is only built through clarity, consistency, and calm relational leadership.
And as we leave you today, I want you to mull over one final thought, building on a question posed at the very end of our source text regarding unmet needs.
Okay.
Think about the person in your life whose behavior frustrates you the most.
Yeah.
Maybe they're constantly defensive during meetings, or they withdraw completely when things get tough, or they're openly defiant when you ask them to do something.
We all have someone like that.
We do. But what if their most difficult, aggravating behavior is actually the most honest piece of communication they've given you all year? And if it is a signal of an unmet need or a profound lack of safety, what does your immediate visceral reaction to it say about your own emotional regulation?
Wow. That really forces you to ask if you are just trying to put a piece of black tape over their check engine light instead of actually figuring out why the alarm is going off in the first place.
It really does.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love unpacking these complex ideas with you, and we hope this gives you a new lens for the interactions in your own life. Until next time, stay curious.